right, like call the committee of the whole meeting for Monday, December 16th, 2024 to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Christensen.
Here.
Trustee Curtis. Trustee Gately. Here. Trustee Lowry. Trustee Nedved.
Here.
Trustee Salazar.
Here.
Mayor Gaffino.
Here. All right, thank you. Audience comments? Trustee comments? Item 1 of discussion, Steve?
Thank you. Item number 1 under discussion is regarding a parent company guarantee that is being offered by CB&I as part of the water tower project that, as Brian had just mentioned, we are looking to bring a final contract to the board in January. Partially one of the reasons while they're doing some work under this letter of intent, we are still finalizing the price of the total contract. So we know roughly where it's going to be. But the reason this is on committee of the whole was there's still a deduct item, as Brian mentioned, for about $240,000. But I thought it was important to bring it to the village board because it's not a normal surety that we use. So typically, as you know, in the development world with the village, that you'll hear terms like cash. Sometimes developers would actually just give us cash, and then we use that cash, put it in the bank, and then if there's any failure on the project, we can use that cash to finish it. A bond, so someone goes out, gets the bond, and then we call the bond through the insurance company, take the funds that way to finish a project that doesn't complete. And of course, the other one is letter of credit, which is same thing, but they put the money up through a bank, project doesn't finish, you go to the bank, you call the letter of credit, you use the funds to finish the project. A parent company guarantee is something we've not done in my tenure here, but it is something that CB&I has done in their history. So I just wanted to make sure that the board was okay moving forward with that. And I had Kevin write a memo that just explains what a parent company guarantee is and the assurances it provides to give the board, the staff direction for finalizing this contract.
Yeah, it's a bit unusual. Our code requires for public improvements that developers put in a letter of credit. And unless we've negotiated under an annexation agreement, the statute allows a developer to offer a bond, and we have to accept a bond in place of a letter of credit. This is a pure contract negotiated arrangement with CB&I. And, we pay, they're going to add to the cost, their cost. It'll add to our cost, what their cost is to obtain a bond. And so this is a creative way of working it out. They have a parent company that's obviously a bigger company than CB&I, which is pretty big. And they gave us a sample of a parent company guarantee that they've used in the past. And it has similar language in it that a letter of credit would have, like an irrevocable and unconditional guarantee, primary, absolute, and unconditional, which is language we would want to see in a letter of credit or in a bond. It's a good creative way of reducing the cost and keeping the cost of the water tower down. It's obviously only as good as the parent company is, but the parent company, with the caveat of their financial position, it's probably a good way of keeping the costs down with minimal risk to us.
I'm okay with that. I know the company, large company, large. Yeah. That's fine with it.
I have a question about the risk. Is there a greater risk associated with doing it this route versus the letter of credit?
Well, certainly versus letter of credit, we could not compel them to, we could negotiate a letter of credit. That would be a much greater cost probably to us than bond. They're going to pass that on to us.
Historic, like how many times we've been on the hook for things in the past. So just, playing devil's advocate, knowing that we've had issues in the past, I don't want us to now take something we've never done before and now we have no recourse.
Well, it's not like it's never been done before. Guarantees are used every day in commercial business. It's not something that we've done. So, yeah. The difference between a bond and the guarantee is that instead of, if we had to enforce our rights under it, we'd be fighting with an insurance company to enforce our rights on a bond. And here we'd be dealing with the parent company. There are different defenses and different, it's some different legal principles that apply, but very similar. So I I don't see it as being a big risk. It wouldn't be a whole lot different than trying to compel an insurance company to pay out
To get a
than it
bond.
would
Right.
to, right?
So here you using the word compel, does that mean filing a motion for a judge to decide to force them to, enforce the bond or the letter of credit, or it's the same thing with the guarantee?
Yeah, we'd have the right, if they refuse, we'd take them to court and, the language in it that, states that it's irrevocable and unconditional. I mean, if CB&I defaults, basically that triggers the guarantor's obligation. And the guarantor is primarily obligated. They're not second. We could go after them first.
Sure.
So it's a pretty good guarantee.
So in your legal opinion, this is the way to go forward.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. And it makes sense from a cost standpoint as well.
Thank you.
Ed?
I'm comfortable with it.
I'm good. I look at it, staff supports it and our attorney supports it.
Because the bond is the same, similar. Bond
Yeah.
is hard too. It's not a
Mhm.
guinea. So, and the company is reputable. They're the largest
Yeah.
tank building company in the country.
All right, so good on that. All right, moving on to item 2, Steve.
Item number 2 is a petition for a new development on Orchard Gateway. Clover was here earlier this year in the spring. They were here with a concept plan. The board said that they were okay with the concept. The concept has gone to the plan commission. Now it's back for your review and your decision to move it on or ask for more information.
Okay, so Clover is looking to go on Orchard Gateway in the town center development. So just to give the little bit of history, Town Center was originally approved in 2005. It included all of this area here along Orchard Gateway. The original Town Center PUD had a residential component to it. It had, approval for townhomes and apartments over in this area. In 2013, that was amended. The PUD was amended and the warehouses were approved there. So the residential component of the town center was, taken away at that point. Back earlier this year, Clover came in for the concept plan. We talked about, should we add a residential component back into the town center? And there seemed to be support for that. What we're bringing forward tonight is a PUD amendment to the town center PUD. The first thing it'll do is say the area in blue is the new residential area. So this is the area in town center where residential could be allowed. It's not exclusively residential. So the area outside of Clover, if you got a good commercial development that we thought was compatible, they could still do that. But if there is to be residential in town center, the area in blue there would be that. And then the area in green is the eastern half of that where Clover is looking to go. So as part of the petition, first we'd amend the PUD to say this is the residential area. We'd also adopt standards. The old PUD had residential standards. They're 20 years old. Yep.
I have a quick question. Looking at this, how it's backing to the wetland, have we done like any grading analysis or anything to make sure that you can develop on this being so close to the wetland?
Yeah, so these lots are in the original town center development, all of the lots you see along Orchard Gateway where it's mowed, those were designed as high and dry buildable lots. So the wetlands were constructed back then. And an SSA was created and, they went through all the wetland and Army Corps documents. But the lots along here are all buildable lots. And that wetland area is the detention for the development. So it was all these lots were set up to be provided with detention and
Have we done any maintenance to make sure that, because I know this was all designed about 20 years ago, but have we done anything recently to make sure that all the drainage is in place, that everything is how it needs to be?
yeah, so the village actually levies a small SSA for town center for pond maintenance. Mostly for mowing, and I think we do some weed control and things, but we do look at that. Obviously, as part of their development, they'll be installing new parking lots and drains to tie into it. But as far as we can tell, it's all in pretty good shape. So Clover, as part of this approval, we'd be approving the residential area, and then we'd be approving the site plan approval for the Clover development itself. So just a couple of the details on that. It would be independent living, so 55 and up. It is deed restricted, so it's not just age targeted, it's age restricted. You can't move in there if you're 25. It has to be 55 and up. 124 unit building. The floor plans show 6 1-bedroom, 1 bath, 78 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 32 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and 8 2-bedroom, 1 bath extended units with a little extra alcove area. There's also amenities. Each unit has full kitchen, stainless steel appliances. There are activity rooms, fitness center, and so on. It is independent living, so there is not a communal kitchen. There is not nursing staff on site. Everybody, cooks their own meals, but it is restricted for seniors. Independent or senior living requires less than the 2 per space that regular apartments do. Senior is only 1 per space. Even so, they are over that amount. They are proposing 148 parking spaces. They're also showing, after the Planning Commission, that topic came up. The Planning Commission asked them to look at parking. So they did show additional spaces here as land banked. So if they needed them, they could easily put those in. And the site is, graded and everything ready for it if the need would arise. The site currently has 2 access points here on Orchard Gateway. So this is the stop sign by JCPenney. And this access point is already there as well. Only the western one has a left turn lane. So we've been going through with our engineers and the applicant to discuss this eastern access point. We are also going to be repaving Orchard Gateway. Maybe next year, maybe possibly, maybe the year after, depending on if we can get it through IDOT. So that stop sign will be staying. So we will be working with the applicant to make any needed improvements to that access point. So with that, I'll invite the applicant up to answer any other questions or add anything else they would like. Let me show you the elevations. It is a 4-story building. Got to mention.
Good evening, Russell Capelin for Clover Development. Clover Development has been in the age-restricted multifamily business since about 1985. We currently have over 50 communities totaling almost 6,000 units located across 8 states. We're very excited about the opportunity to come to North Aurora. We see there being tremendous demand for our product. We're a little bit different than some of the other products that you've seen in the market. We don't compete with the assisted living or the skilled nursing, nor do we keep everybody in and have meal plans and what have you. It allows us to deliver a product to a lower price point and really make it available to a wider group of people. Additionally, our residents, they continue to go out into the community for shopping, for their usual doctors, their places of worship. They have an opportunity to kind of continue for that. As such, most of our residents come from roughly about a 5-mile radius from the property. There's about 20,000, 22,000 seniors in that in that area, and we see there being tremendous demand for a product like ours.
Do we have any other 4-story apartments or anything like that in town? Will this be our first?
This will be the first. We have several other proposals, including the next one. So
And I'm assuming the height of the building is below our ordinance or whatever it might be that we have
So part of the PUD amendment is adopting new standards. So the Exhibit D in your packet lists the new standards for residential, and we're calling out 4 stories as allowed.
Okay. I read the plan commission concerns with the parking, and I actually agree quite a bit with their concerns. So I see you guys came back with some additional potential future parking spots, and I was just curious, why not just put that in right away?
Across our portfolio, we average between about 1 and 1.2 spaces per unit. And, you know, we've been doing it for a long time, and consistently our utilization is well below that for
Okay.
parking. So we don't, you know, based on our experience, we don't see there being a need for more than the 1.2.
Okay, but again, it'll be there if needed.
Yeah, if the situation arises where additional parking is, you know, is needed, we would absolutely put it in. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna create a parking problem or let units go
Sure.
unleased because we can't pave a parking spot.
Obviously, okay. You know, I like the idea of putting residential just like when it was first proposed there, so I'm in favor.
How does this height stack up to some of the warehouses as far as like the 4th floor?
So the warehouse buildings across the street, they're gonna top out around the 50-foot mark. And this will be similar to that. I think the max height is
Yeah, a roof is
48.
about 48.6 to the highest point.
So it would be similar to the height of
Comparable
the-
for the space at least. Comparable to the space.
Yes, yes.
And this is we're only approving it for this particular spot.
Right, so, you know, you're approving that residential can go all in the blue. You're approving the site plan for Clover. So if another user came in to do the rest of it, they'd have to come forward and get their site plan approved.
And then is regarding 4-story, is it just for this area or is it for the entire town that you said then we'd be updating?
Just for this area.
Okay.
So the underlying B2 zoning is 3-story. now.
Okay,
I like the project. I think that, because of where it's located and there's really essentially nothing behind it and there's stores on the other side of it, I don't have a problem whatsoever with the 4 stories. And I like the idea. I think that there is a need for that. 55 and older, it's just older people, right? No kids. Yeah, I like the development. I like the project. I'm in favor of it. And I like the idea that something else, residential can just be there altogether. So, yeah, I'm for it.
What about visitor parking?
You know, again, we think we do have enough parking,
Okay.
you know, there to, you know, to accommodate visitors as well.
So it's not like you get this spot, each spot's numbered kind of thing. It's just like first come, first serve.
It is, with the exception of, we do have roughly 40 garages.
Yeah.
And those obviously would be, you know, assigned and what have you, but for the balance is open parking.
Is there any concern that there's only a crosswalk on the one side?
So that was part of the planning commission's comments was about sidewalks. So after the planning commission meeting, they did extend the sidewalk along the whole frontage. We just have the crosswalk there because that's where the stop sign is. We did not put a crosswalk here. Orchard Gateway speeds can get kind of fast, so we didn't want to do it at an uncontrolled intersection. We did have them extend the crosswalk along the whole frontage. Generally, as you look at Orchard Gateway, there's only sidewalk on the south side, the whole length. There isn't on the north side. We didn't have the Ram dealership or Sherwin-Williams put it in on the north side. At the time, we weren't thinking that this would come, so it just didn't happen. We did have them put sidewalk on their whole frontage. Whatever goes in the rest of the blue area, we'll have them extend sidewalk. That'll get you to the signal by Target, and you can cross back safely there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Would there be like a flashing crosswalk kind of thing? Like you could push a button kind of thing there?
So right now, this intersection just has a regular stop sign. As we go through the repaving, we have a chance to upgrade signage. Is that a good candidate for a blinker? one of the flashing stop signs, sure. I don't know if that can be rolled into the project or if that's
I was
something.
thinking more like the one down here where a pedestrian can like push the button and it'll start flashing, like the yellow.
That's something we can look into.
We tend to stay away from doing those flashing yellow on four-way roads like, or four-lane roads like that, especially when there's a turn lane, because that's 5 lanes to cross. And the accidents you see with those blinkers are the situation where you're halfway through the intersection, don't realize a car's coming from the other direction behind a car that you see. So in other towns, there's been a couple fatalities because of that. So we've kind of stayed away from that.
Do you find at your other sites that people do walk and leave the property, or they like to drive somewhere?
Typically, they'll drive.
Yeah.
Somewhere. I mean, might they go across to JCPenney? I could see it. I know they're not going down to McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be too far. That's too far for me.
Okay. Yeah, I like the idea. Mark?
I'm fine.
Idea that more residents
Yeah.
and people that live locally, they have downside, they could stay in the community. I love
Right.
it.
So, all right.
Good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Mm.
Thank you.
All right, item 3, Steve.
Thank you. Item number 3 tonight is Randall Oaks. It's a concept plan by the developer Shodine. Shodine owns the property and has for several years. The property it's actually unincorporated North Aurora, completely surrounded by us on 4 sides. It is the open field on Randall that is just north of Aldi and Pet Supplies Plus. Shodine was here in 2016 and proposed the concept plan. Didn't move forward with that concept at the time. They're back here today to go over a similar plan. Nathan's going to walk us through that. And the big thing out of this is anything that moves forward would require a annexation agreement.
So I'm just going to be very brief because Dave from Shodine has a whole presentation to show you the models, the insides and everything else. So I'll let him do most of the talking, but there it is on the map. As Steve said, it's totally surrounded by the village. The plan would connect Miller Drive through. So you'd make that connection. Generally, you have, commercial up by Randall. They're showing a full access on Randall coming in and connecting up with Miller Drive. Apartment buildings to the rear. This building here would be a 4-story building, and that would be a mixed-use building with ground floor commercial and residential above to add more commercial to the area between Miller and Randall. And with that, I'm going to stop and let Dave show his presentation here. Let me bring that up.
Okay. Yep.
Nope.
Okay. If there's enough, I'll take.
Good evening. While I was trying to pull the presentation up for introduction purposes, my name is David Patzelt, Patzelt, 77 North First Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. What I was I've passed out a copy of our or my presentation, mainly in the presentation, trying to allow you to see some photographs of many of the buildings that we have built and developed over the years, trying to give you a flavor of what we're proposing here at Randall and Oak.
It's up on my screen. There we go. Nope, almost. There we go.
Thanks, Nathan. So the first one is the first slide here gives you a briefing of several of the products that we're going to be talking about today. Starting on the left, some multifamily product. It can be considered a 4-story building, as you were just talking about previously. However, this is a 3-story building and plus an underground parking garage. But if you were to get into the elevator of the building, you would see 4 buttons. But keep in mind that sometimes I talk about 3/1, meaning 4 stories, but often that 4th floor is underground. In the lower left, you'll see that is our St. Charles Prairie Center building. And for those of you that don't know, we're also in the hotel and restaurant business with hotels that we've developed in Naperville, St. Charles, and then the Harrington in downtown Geneva. We've also have extensive experience in the mixed use development and building and ownership, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The second slide here, again, we consider ourselves a developer. People also know us as a home builder, and then some communities consider us a master developer. And in essence of what is a master developer? Master developer is developing a variety of types of products that all go into one proposed development. And we have experience doing that in both greenfields, brownfields, as well as some downtown development. And as I go through the presentation, you'll get some examples of those. Next slide, please. So we not only develop, we also build and retain ownership many of these properties. And then we maintain and lease those properties out to commercial users and other restaurateurs. And we are also in the retail and office management business, meaning that we have retailers that are tenants of ours as well as office users. Next slide. Many of you may know of us is from our Mill Creek development that was an award-winning master plan community in unincorporated Kane County with Geneva mailing address and Batavia mailing addresses that included a couple schools, a couple churches, couple golf courses, some neo-traditional urban design of single family, and there was mixed use buildings included in the downtown of that area. It also included apartments, condominiums, its own wastewater treatment plant, its own water supply system. And many of the designs that you find in Mill Creek were also incorporated into the Glen, which was the redevelopment out in Glenview of the Naval Air Station. Next slide. Our downtown development consists a good example of things such as our Dodson Place, which was 8 buildings on 3rd Street in downtown Geneva. Again, that included single family homes in neo-traditional style. I use that term neo-traditional. You may not know what that means, but it brings back using the alleys where the garages are not proud of the fronts of the home. So neo-traditional has the garage accesses on the backside of the homes. There was also some townhomes in there. There was apartments, 8 commercial buildings, and included over 120,000 square feet of commercial, retail, and office space, as well as introduced underground parking in the downtown Geneva area. Again, these photographs that you see here are examples of that construction of those buildings. Next slide, please. Another development, redevelopment was the redevelopment of the St. Charles Mall that is currently under construction, generally located at the northeast corner of Randall and Route 38. It in essence was a brownfield site, taking down the mall as well as a Kmart, a Spees, and then the interior mall that was connecting those anchor stores. It is approximately 25 acres. It consists of 770 residential units, all rental units, as well as 60,000 square feet of commercial space. And those buildings are broken down by purely residential buildings. There is a mixed use building that is 4 stories plus an underground parking. So in theory, calling that a 5-story building, but again, the 5th story being buried underground, and then commercial outlots fronting along Illinois Route 38. Next slide. We've have done downtown redevelopment work in Oswego. It's our tallest building in our product line. That is a 6-story building. That happens to be 4 stories of residential, over 2 stories of structured parking. 1.5 of the stories are buried into the ground on one side of the building, and then on the opposite side, the full 2 stories are exposed. That happens to be a public-private partnership with the village of Oswego, included in essence condominiumizing the entire structure where the village of Oswego became the owners of the 350 car parking garage, and we retain ownership of the 176 residential apartments above that parking garage. Within those apartments, we stay consistent, whether you're in St. Charles, downtown Geneva, or in Oswego. We include what we call luxury amenities within all of our apartments. Those luxury items include stainless steel appliances, all granite countertops, and not only the kitchens, but in the bathrooms and in the bathrooms. Every unit has its own in-unit washer dryer. Every unit has its own private balcony, and many of the units have walk-in closets. Next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit on our site plan eventually about what I referred to as a 3/1 parking. So technically it is, again, the 4-story building. The 1 level is underground parking that is buried under the ground. What you're seeing here are photographs of our residential products, all 3/1 that are out in the Mill Creek development. Again, architectural style would be in keeping with these when we propose what we propose to do here in North Aurora. Next slide is a sample of our mixed use product. The top photograph, again, is a building in Mill Creek that happens to be 2 floors of residential over 1 floor of commercial office retail space. The lower left corner happens to be a mixed use building with 3 levels of residential over 1 floor of commercial retail space, and that is in St. Charles. You may notice on these mixed use buildings, there's the option to go with a flat roof or pitched roof. We are open to either style. With the pitched roof, you obviously pick up some additional height on the structures. However, if you talk to some architects or planners, they'll tell you that when you look at a pitched roof structure in a pitched roof environment, such as a residential neighborhood, you may get the belief, or it may fool you in telling you that because of that eave line, it pulls the eave line down, that the structure actually looks shorter than a flat roofed structure. But as we talk about these buildings and the heights of them, we are open to whether that is a flat roof building or a pitched roof building. Another example of a mixed use is photographed in the lower right, which is our Dodson Place building number 8 on 3rd Street in Geneva. Again, it is 2 stories of residential over one level of commercial space, and that is all over 1 level of buried parking. The next photograph, again, is an elevation of our 4/2. We don't have anything planned for 4/2 in North Aurora, but again, just gives you an example of a 6-story building with a pitched roof. And in that case, the village of Oswego chose to go with a pitched roof on a 6-story building versus a flat roof on a 6-story building. Lower right, you'll see that that building, as well as a majority of our rental units, include outdoor amenities such as barbecue grills, pavilions, bocce ball, and a pool and fitness club within the community. Next. Inside our units, as I described for you earlier, we tried to give them a luxury appeal with the various appliances, the stainless steel appliances, the granite countertops, the common corridors. We try to enhance those with breaking up the length of the corridor with some I'll call false pilasters. that's in the lower left, you can see that we enhance the millwork within the units, including things such as raised base, paneled doors, chair rail, multicolored walls, wainscoting, and carpet. All of the units are individually metered. As you can see here in the upper right, we also have relationships with the cable provider AT&T to provide fiber not only to the buildings, but we're providing fiber optic and giga speeds into the units to assist those that may want to work from home or work from their apartment unit. Lower left, you see the appliances, the washer and dryer in every unit. In the lower right, we do not permit anything to be stored on people's balconies. We don't permit barbecuing on the balconies. What we do provide for in the parking garage are storage units that you see there in the lower right. In essence, a caged unit that is assigned to each apartment unit. In addition to one being assigned to you, there are additional caged units that can be made available for those that want to have an additional or a second caged unit. What we're trying to do is prevent people from storing their belongings out on the balconies, and or we're in the business with detached garages. We found that people would rent a detached garage unit and use that as storage for their belongings. So to prevent that, we're trying to give control of to where belongings can be stored, in essence, in the within these caged units in the underground garages. This is a photograph, aerial photograph of the site. On the right-hand side, generally going north-south, is Randall Road. Along the bottom of the photograph is Oak Street. The site is colored in the middle, and then immediately north of our site, we have placed in the proposed apartment development that started under construction and has since stopped, just so you can get a sense of what that proposed building layout would look like with our site. You'll see that from Randall Road, again, that's on the right-hand side, we are proposing a full access point, generally in the center of the development off of Randall Road. So that would be a full left in, right out, left out. That happens to fall approximately half the distance between Oak Street and Comiskey. And that is at about the dimension of 800 feet. So it would not be signalized, but would provide full access at that location. In addition to that, there is an existing right in, right out at the southeast corner of the site. That right in, right out, thank you, Nathan. That right in, right out is not on our property. We believe in cross-access easement agreements. We have contacted the property owners to the south, the north, to see if they are interested in providing connections or cross-access. So we are open to that. What exactly is that? That just means that you could drive from their property and immediately access our property and vice versa. The cross-access easement allows people to flow freely between all of the properties without any restriction. So we are open to that. We've contacted them and have suggested it. We've done it in other developments and works, seems to work well. As Nathan had pointed out, we are connecting Miller Drive on the south to Miller Drive on the north. And then in essence, the residential units to the west of Miller Drive, the only access that they would have is back out onto Miller Drive, unless the property owners to the south had requested a cross-access easement. To give you a little bit better blow up or focus into the plan, here you can see the the roadway connections that we have with Miller Drive and Randall Road. If we go to the next slide. To provide you with a little more clarity, and we've provided this colored plan. In essence, there are 9 buildings, buildings 1 through 7, and then buildings A and B. The buildings identified as A and B are commercial users. We've identified one as a with a drive up. That is B. A, we're showing that as either retail or a restaurant user. Our intent is that we do not have any users for either of these commercial buildings, but we would want to have the flexibility to where one or both could have drive ups. One or both could be restaurants, or one or both could be some type of commercial retail user. Building number 2 is a mixed use building. We are using that building to, in essence, transition our zoning from the commercial side on the east, transitioning it to the residential on the west. With that mixed use, we call that a double fronted building, meaning that if you're on the east side of the building or if you're on the west side of the building, really couldn't tell which side is the front of the building. We'd like to have the commercial use that is on the first floor of building 2 be able to front Miller Drive and have on-street parking, so you would get this sense or this feeling that you're on a local street and not have a back of the building facing either the commercial users or facing Miller Drive. Again, a double fronted building. Buildings 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all residential buildings. That is all 3 floors of residential units over 1 floor of underground parking. In the middle, immediately west of Miller Drive, where there's the blue rectangle, that is a outdoor swimming pool for tenants that are within either building, any of the buildings 1 through 7. And then there's an outdoor pavilion immediately north of the pool that would contain items such as barbecue, outdoor fire pit, relaxation areas, et cetera.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many residential units are you proposing?
So in the overall plan, we are at 183 residential units. Those 183 units consist of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units.
Do you propose that, do you see that there'd be an impact to the school district? Do you typically see a lot of children occupying these?
So
Families?
we don't, and if that, I'll jump ahead to a couple slides here. Nathan, if you could jump to the Shodine rental communities analysis, that one. So because we don't provide 3-bedroom units, we tend to see a couple things happening with our product. I draw your attention to this chart. This is of our products that we have between Oswego, Geneva, and St. Charles. And if you look at the bottom line there, you'll see the average age of the residents that are in the building. We generally are drawing the older clientele that don't have school-age children. So our number of children that are within the building is ends up being a lower number because of the product and the number of bedrooms that are provided within the building. In all of the communities that we've built these products, we've had no objections from the school districts. So I don't foresee there being any issue with children. We don't have anything against children, but the product is geared more towards an empty nester, older clientele, and not towards a child's environment. Nathan, if I could back up to the site plan. I'm sorry to,
Yeah, let me zoom back out.
if you could go back one, I think it's one more slide, please. Thank you. In addition to the 183 residential units, there is 17,000 square feet of commercial space on the first floor of the mixed-use building. And then there's approximately 15,000 square feet of commercial space between the buildings A and building B. So that gives us a total of about 32,000 square feet of commercial space. We have 264 parking spaces in the garage. And we have approximately 300 surface spaces shown on the plan. Next slide, please. Give you an example of how we plan to landscape each building as they are built. We believe that our buildings will greatly exceed the landscaping requirements of the village. Next slide. One of the items that may be a little bit, say, the controversial, however, one of the prior presenter just before me, it was interesting that his or their statistical numbers on parking spaces are right within the same ballpark that where we find our parking analysis. There's been a lot of I'll say over the years that I've been in the planning business, there's been a lot of talk and discussions and studies done about parking over the years. And as it's been dubbed that there's actually a paradigm shift in the parking requirements. I've outlined here a couple of key points. The first one is your current ordinance requires you to have 2 parking spaces per residential unit. Also for the commercial, you're at 4 per 1,000, and the restaurant demand is 1 per 60 square feet of seating space. The commercial space, really don't have any objection to those quantities. It's the 2 parking spaces per residential unit that we believe is excessive and would be requesting a reduction in that 2.0 parking space coefficient. We don't believe that the ordinance that you currently have considers such items as vacancy of uses. We all wish and desire that we're 100% occupied, but reality is we're never 100% occupied, whether that's on the residential side or on the commercial side. Then there's also the shared parking coefficient, shared parking spaces, meaning that I live in one of these apartment units and I'm going to go to dinner at the restaurant. I only have 1 car. I leave my car and I walk over to the restaurant, or I walk over to one of the commercial retail uses. Also, we do not reserve parking spaces, and that is also brought up here a little bit earlier. In the underground parking garage, yes, we do have reserved parking spaces. However, outside, we're not reserved parking, so it is as available, those parking spaces are available to anyone, whether it's a guest, visitor, or resident of the building. And then there's also these parking coefficients that you have within the ordinance don't take into account the hours of uses. Typically, what we see is during the day, people may be leaving their households and going somewhere, they free up a parking space. Yet during the day, these commercial retail spaces, places are open for business and they need the parking spaces. And then that tends to flip in the evening, late at night, the commercial users closed, parking spaces are sitting vacant, people are home and in the evening and can be using those parking spaces. These ideas and concepts are not new. They've been studied by the US EPA, the Urban Land Institute, the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, Institute for Transportation Engineers. Everybody has looked at these over the past 5 to 10 years and has acknowledged that there is this shared relationship. In 2 of the communities in which we've done work, including St. Charles and Batavia, They have had their own engineer studies look at this, and they have also agreed that there is a relationship of this shared and discount factors to parking spaces within mixed use. Next slide. So what to
Supposing we change it from two to what?
show you on this slide here. So we've taken our own products on this chart here. I've given you the three examples from Oswego, which is on the left, Geneva is in the middle, and St. Charles is on the right, and then giving you a little bit of an analysis of combining all of those buildings. The first row, I give you the number of units, and we've broken it down for you, whether that is based on the number of occupied units or whether it's the number of actual units within the development. Also giving you the number of people that are actually living within these units that we lease. And then we require all of our tenants to register their vehicles so that if there's a problem in the parking lot or in the garage, we have their vehicle registered when they move in. So if you look across the chart all the way to the far right, you'll see that over the 787, almost 800 units here within, I'll say, the local community, we have a parking number of people, and then we have the number of cars. And you can see that we have a 1.21 based on the occupied units. And then we have a 1.02 cars for all of the units across the board. The prior applicant mentioned that they generally are in a 1.2 range, which happens to fall in our actual data. We're at a 1.2 based on occupied units, and actually lower for if you look at all of the units. So the next slide. The next slide, if you look at the table to the upper right-hand side, we have proposed in our parking requirements, we're showing that we have the layout that you're looking at has a coefficient of 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We are also, our commercial uses, we have the parking spaces as your ordinance requires. So we did not discount those. We believe that we could be, and our preference is actually that if we went to a 1.3 parking spaces per unit. So what am I proposing? Our plan shows a 1.5 parking ratio, which we think is too many spaces. As the prior applicant had showed you, we can show that we have 1.5, but we're suggesting that we build only 1.3, leaving the additional space as green space. But in the event that we have a problem, we could further build it out. As the owner and operator of the building, we're suggesting that it be 1.3. However, knowing that your ordinance is 2.0, not sure how comfortable you are with the data that we've talked about today. We are open to being somewhere in that 1.3 to 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
You have a breakdown of the studios versus the 2 bedrooms?
We do not. I do not have that breakdown. It's something that I could get for you. You'll see with our number of people on that prior chart that we have per unit. Often people take a 2-bedroom unit, and that second bedroom is either an office working space, or they just have it for a guest that may come over. So it doesn't necessarily tell us that a 2-bedroom unit means that there's going to be two people. All right. My next slide. That concludes my presentation. I tried to go quick, seeing the meeting was moving along quick, but if there's questions that I could answer for you, I'll certainly try to do that.
You know, we're talking about density basically when we're looking at needing more parking. So what goes off in my head is there too much density? Are there too many units? We could either reduce the units, increase the parking, or decrease the parking, increase the units. So based on our ordinance, I mean, is this going to be too high density for this use? I don't understand why we would need to reduce the parking proposal. I mean, what have we done for like the springs and the seasons?
That's
So
a good
if it's
question.
fine for them, I mean, my first thing that I'm thinking is we've got too high of a density for the use.
Sure, that's a good question. I'm gonna defer immediately to Nathan, but before that, I will say that this question of density and parking comes up every time there's a multifamily structure because people are concerned. If you've driven through some of the areas, there are issues in some areas that have parking in some of the older apartment complexes that didn't probably have that ratio. Nathan, did you have any with Seasons and Springs, how they're doing?
Yeah, so the newer developments haven't had parking problems. You know, if you go to some of the older developments right up here on Butterfield or on 31, you'll see parking issues. You know, those developments weren't done to modern codes. Compared to our surrounding communities, the 2 per space requirement is high, compared to our neighboring communities. It is all over the board, though. You know, I can't tell you there's an exact standard that everybody uses. Some towns break it up into by units, you know, so more for a 2-bedroom, less for a studio. Some just have a lower ratio. You know, I can do a little bit of a study to look around to see what our neighboring communities are doing and bring that information to you. I can tell you that pretty much everybody who's coming in, and we're seeing, you know, quite a few multifamily applications these days, or people looking for that type of product. The first thing they all say is, wow, 2 is high. So, you know, that is something you're going to be seeing in PUDs, in annexation agreements. You know, it's going to be a topic in all of these. You know, most applicants are saying similar things, that, you know, their data show it to be less what they're using. So, you know, I can do a little bit of a study, like I said, and see what our neighboring communities are doing, but it's definitely going to be a topic in all of these
But
Isn't
going
it-
back to the density of it, how many units did you say? 100 and?
We are 183 units.
So density wise for that amount of acreage, is that considered high density, low density, medium density?
So when you do it by acreage, so comparing it to, say, Randall Terrace, the project right next door, they had similar sized buildings, but less land. So if you look at this plan, you know, they have all the land out to the west as kind of a buffer, the pond and wetland area. So when you spread the units out over the land, it's not as high as Randall Terrace. They're going to have less density, but some of that's wetland and unbuildable. In terms of the buildable area, they'd be similar.
I mean, just off the top of my head, when the Springs opened, I recall them having some parking issues in the beginning, but I think it was because they were letting people park in an area that they weren't supposed to, because it was convenient, maybe to proximity of the buildings. But since then, and that was years ago, I'm not aware of any spillover parking issues. Seasons is kind of new, so we haven't really had any complaints about that. Where, other than the older areas where maybe apartments were built, like in one neighborhood where we have street parking is an issue because they're not using the parking lot. Part of that is because the tenants there are charged a fee to park in the parking lot. And some people choose to park on the street because it's free to park on the street. In other areas where we've seen multifamily where parking issues, some of that is to do to some of the conversation we had tonight about storage. Some people are choosing to use their garage, which at the time of their approval of that development, the garage was figured into the count for parking. But what ends up happening is people are using the garage for storage and then trying to park on the street. But in these cases where you have apartment complexes coming in with designated parking specifically for parking only on the street, I don't think we've had many issues.
No, and in this case, Miller Drive would be the only public road. The rest of these roads would be private to them. So
I also, oh, I'm sorry, so too close to that. Sorry, I woke everybody up, didn't I? You said there's parking underground as well, right?
Yes, out of our, in the chart that I have provided, I indicate the number of underground parking spaces. If you were to total those up, we are at 264 spaces underground.
Underground, okay.
And
And also it's 4 stories, but 1 is underground. So above ground is only 3 stories. So it's going to look, visually, it's going to look like 3 stories.
correct. And the
Okay.
other big advantage of taking those cars and putting them underground and when they're in essence buried is when you drive in or drive through, you don't see the cars and you don't see a series of garage doors or garage structures, in an apartment complex where that is common. You drive through and you see garage door, garage door, garage door.
Right.
So that is one of the benefits, I would say, of hiding the vehicles. You don't get that feel of the parking lot being as large as you would otherwise. The other thing I would encourage you to think about is the word density. Couple things. One, as far as density in a parking, if we're charging $2,500 a month for somebody to live in one of these buildings and they come home at night and there's nowhere to park, they're not going to call you. They're going to call who they're writing the check to for that apartment. So that's one. The second one is density can be a little bit of a deceiving term or calculation. Our apartments range from 700 square feet on the small side to approximately 1,100 square feet. So if you were to calculate and you said density and just called it a unit, in theory, if you have a 2,000 or 2,400 square foot house and you're calling that 1 unit, but then you call a 700 square foot apartment 1 unit, clearly those are not equal as far as a density. The other item I think you need to look at, and I provided it for you here on the table, is the actual number of people that we have in these units. And what we end up with, and this is based on our 800 units, we have in essence 1.3 people registered living in each of these units versus an entire family perhaps living in a 2,000 or 2,400 square foot house. So I'm just saying that if you say density factor, that really have to think about the product that you're referring to, the density. It's an apartment is a much smaller footprint and a lot less people there. And then studios, we find that studios are often for people that travel quite a bit and or have a second home somewhere, and they're just having a studio, a place to rest their head when they're here in town versus staying in a hotel repeatedly. So just suggest that, keep in mind that word density is just not, just don't look at a unit, look at the definition or what exactly is 1 unit.
You did also say that there would be green areas should there be some issue that you'd be able to develop into additional parking.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Is all the parking for the apartment buildings all underground?
We are generally 1.0 units underground. And then if it was a 1.2 per unit, that 0.2 or 0.3 or 0.5, as we're suggesting, that point would be generally outside. But
So
we're
in the
always 1.0 inside.
Okay.
Every unit gets a space inside
That's correct.
and all the extra ones are in these lots in between.
All right. So in that picture right now up there in between, say, buildings 5, 6, and 7, what's all that yellow? Is that parking?
That's part.
That is,
Okay.
that is surface parking.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
then
you can
building-
see at the ends of the building, there is a ramp going down to the underground parking on the
Right.
north ends of 5, 6, and 7.
Okay. And then
I think their
building
question-
2, the mixed use, that would be a 4-story building. Is that correct?
That would be,
Three,
so it's 3 floors of residential, 1 floor of commercial, and then underground
but above ground, it's 4 stories, just
is-
that one building.
is 4 stories,
Okay.
correct?
For which building was that? I'm sorry. Number 2?
That is building number 2.
Okay, thank you.
So what is the 4 and 2. I've seen these 4 and 2 buildings. They're not attractive. I'd much prefer this entire development be the 3 and 1 with the underground parking.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
I was saying, I've seen these 4 and 2 buildings, and I don't think they're very attractive. They look like a fortress to me. I mean, I'd like to see these all be 3 and 1s if possible. Can you just go through each building and tell me what you were thinking for each one?
Sure. The only, let me start with building 2, because that's the only different one. Building 2 is underground parking, first floor commercial, 3 floors of residential.
So building 2 is mixed use.
Correct.
So for the residential only product, will they all be 3 and 1s?
Yes.
They will. The other thing I'd like to say is I'd prefer some architectural detail on these. I'd prefer some pitched roofing. I love your product at Dodson Place, how you have mixes of stone with the wood and a lot of architectural detail on them. I'd like to see more of that. I've been driving around a lot in St. Charles and Geneva, some of those new apartment buildings that have been built, and they just look so cookie cutter. And I'd like us to have a little bit nicer of a product than what I'm seeing being built.
So for buildings, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, would they be all the same architectural style? I mean, you have different styles throughout all your developments. Could you do different styles for the different buildings?
We could, we're perfectly fine with that. As a minimum, we would like to change the colors and the use of the materials on each of the buildings. So building, now, the architectural styles we would think would want to be in keeping with each other, but they do not have to appear as that they are, I'll call them sister buildings, or that you're on a campus of all of the same buildings. Some communities in which we have done these developments, they actually have requested that the architecture look all similar. So it's
Definitely need some uniformity. I don't want it to be 5 or 6 different buildings. But what I'm saying is I'd like to see them all have a little bit more detail, like the pitched roofs versus the flat roof versus all of them being 100% frame, maybe having some exterior ornamentation on the facade, but keeping uniformity throughout the development. I don't think we want 5 buildings that are 5 different colors.
we have no objection to that. If you Nathan, if you can get to this, the 3+1 slide towards the beginning. Back 1 or 2 more. Yeah. As an example, these are the various buildings that we have in Mill Creek, and you can see that upper left, we've used stone on the first floor, and then I believe that is a shake siding on the upper hand. The lighter. So that is a shake siding, and then the darker green happens to be a clapboard horizontal board siding. Building immediately to the right is within eyesight of the building to the left. I think they're architecturally in keeping with each other, but again, the use of materials and colors changes between the various buildings. So hopefully that gives you examples of maybe I'm thinking this is what you would like to potentially see as architectural detail and changes.
I mean, I don't want to say we are an upscale community, but we're also, a community that has a lot of, cool looking buildings. We've got Fortunato, we've got the turf room. So for that area, I'd like to see something in keeping with what we're seeing in our commercial development.
Okay. Anybody else?
I've known Shodine, they've been around for 100 years. I think it's fine. So I think they put out a good product.
Todd?
No, it needs to be developed over there, and I think this is a great, we need residents, right? We need population, so I think this would be a nice fit. I know you can't guarantee anything, but those 2 commercial buildings up front, certainly, I think everybody in this room would love to see restaurants in there, but I know you don't control that at this point.
Not fast food restaurants.
Jason?
I don't like the idea of the 4 stories in the front. I understand wanting to try to keep with 3 levels of residence, but I think it should be more consistent and held at 3 and 1 with the others. much like you have here on the slide in Mill Creek. It looks acceptable there, whereas I feel like you're going to have a big monster building kind of overseeing all the rest. And all in all, I really don't love the idea of all of this extra residential, but so is progress, I guess. I'd rather see it be a park.
Carolyn?
The one product that I am familiar with of yours is the one on Third Street in Geneva. And I've often said to myself, I think it's very attractive in the way that it's done. It looks very tasteful. It looks higher end, and I would like to see that sort of concept brought here. I assume that's what you're proposing. I also don't love the idea of 4 stories, but it is just the one building. And it is more toward the commercial area. So I don't have a problem. And you know, Shodine's reputation precedes you, right? You're known to do a very good product. And so, I mean, I like the idea. I think, all in all, you've assuaged any concern I had about parking. So I'm in favor.
All right, thanks. I too, I like the continuity of the buildings. As trustee Curtis said, you know, a few changes, but I don't think I would want to see like major changes of all 7 different, you know, buildings. I think having majority, but kind of looks similar with some different, you know, materials maybe on the outside. Yeah, other than that, no, I'd like to see some restaurants up front as well. And, the parking issue, I guess we can get some feedback on that and see where things are.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we'll
that-
do a little bit of research on that. You know, it is an annexation agreement, so any type of variances like that can be called out in agreement, and design standards can be put in the agreement. So if we want to make sure, you know, certain looks or variations, we can put that in the agreement as well. So, you know, we're in the very early stages, so there's lots to do.
Yeah, it's nice to get more residents in that area. So I think, you know, it's been vacant as long as I can remember and, been here a while.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that'll spur on more restaurants and, you know, with our higher count. So anything else?
Is there a community space other than the pool and the outdoor area?
The pool in the outdoor area is the only community space. No community building per se.
Gotcha.
Any questions, staff? Are we good with what you got from us? And-
We'll take it from there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes discussion. Entertain motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, opposed, same sign. Good night, everyone.
Everyone has a wonderful holiday.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and go Bears.